Hey, Restorers, Pastor Ryan. Thank you for joining us for final week in our series, All Thrones. I just want to encourage you, if you've missed any of the weeks of All Thrones, they're going to be online on our Facebook page, and then also going to be on our YouTube page. So go ahead and find that, subscribe, follow, let us know that you're watching in the comments, and we're just really thankful that you could join us for this series. For this series, we're going and walking through Colossians, the book of Colossians, and Pastor Dave has nailed it and crushed the first 3 weeks, and I hope we can finish this out strong, right? Chapter 4 of Colossians is where we're going to be digging into today. When I was in high school, we had just a few electives. I didn't go to a very big high school. I went to school where the one building was K through 12. And so you had one half of the building was kindergarten through sixth grade, and the other side of the building, the other half of the building, was 7 through 12. And here's the kind of the fun thing, the silly thing for me. When I was in sixth grade, we were on the one side of the building, and they were building a brand new addition onto our school. But previously in 7 through 12, they actually were in this upper part of the school. And so they actually had upstairs portion of our school, which was really cool. And I always was so excited that to be able to go there. And so when I was in sixth grade, we went with a seventh grader to the high school to try it out, to check it out, to see where we'd be going the next year. The only problem was we weren't going to be going there the next year. And so, we went I actually never got to go to school in the new part of the building, because that was going to be the kindergarten through sixth grade, and I ended up staying in the same part of the building from kindergarten all the way through my senior year of high school, and it just was what it was, right? I just stayed in the same place. It was my comfort, my zone, right? Well, anyways, in high school, you had a chance to take electives. You had your core stuff, but then you had your electives that you could take, and that was like home ec, wood shop, and then they did other stuff back in the wood shop, like automotive, things like that. And so for my electives, I ended up taking the classes that I knew that I could get a really good grade in to kind of boost my GPA, because I didn't always do great in school, and so I ended up taking home ec a couple of different times in order to kind of keep my GPA high enough so that when I graduate, I can get into a good school. I took home ec, and I don't remember what time it was. I think it was like my sophomore or junior year. And this time I took home ec, we ended up having to sew stuff. And we learned how to measure and to cut fabric, how to find the pattern that you wanted, right? And then to cut it out, and then how to stitch it. And I ended up in that class, that trimester, making a pair of underwear. Actually, I think I made a couple of pair of underwear. And so I made this pair of underwear, and I thought it was awesome. I thought it was kind of cool that I was stitching all this up myself, and that I was doing building and creating my own clothes for my wardrobe. And so I made this pair of underwear, I brought them home, washed them, and I took them to school. I wore them to school, and I put them in my bag for Phi Ed. And in Phi Ed that I was in at that time, we had broken it up the semester into different sections, and I was in the second group for Phi Ed because I wasn't a football player. So you had the football players that went first, and then we went to health class, and then we would kind of swap out. And so I was in the second group, which was not the athletic football players, but we were kind of like the second group, right? A lot of basketball players played in that group, and myself, who were that with that group, and we played different things during the year of Phi Ed. But I remember this time we played um, flag football. Now I was really good at flag football, and I wasn't great at tackle football because I didn't like getting hit. But I remember that in the um, flag football that we played with the rest of the class, I was very good. And I don't want to brag about my athletic prowess, but I was elite in that class. I had swag before swag had swag, right? I was running crisp routes out there, catching these laser passes. I would tap my toes on the sideline and in the end zone like Chris Carter. I was doing plays and things that no one had saw before. I mean, I was Chris Carter mixed with Justin Jefferson. I was JJ before JJ was JJ, right? I was elite at flag football. But here's the thing. With all that swag and attitude that I was playing with, nothing can drop your swag faster than what happened to me on that day in Phi Ed. See, I had gotten my gear on, my tank top. I had ripped off the sleeves on a t-shirt, so I was wearing this cut off tank top shirt, and I was wearing my athletic shorts, right? And that day I had brought my underwear that I made myself, and I'm wearing the underwear that I made myself, and I've got the athletic shorts on, and I've got my shoes, and I was out there balling. I had the swag going. I was playing so well that day. And I believe I was running out to catch what probably was my fifth touchdown of the day. And the stitching came out of my homemade underwear. And after I catch my pass, I realized that there was a little too much breeze going on. And I look down and I see my underwear that I had created had failed me and were hanging outside of my shorts. And I realized that I was doing this, and I quickly tried to hide this and tuck it back into my shorts to no avail. And everybody around me saw that the elite swagged out receiver in flag football had just lost his underwear. You see, what I had failed to do was secure the stitching in my underwear. See, what they tell you to do with sewing, when you're sewing a shirt or underwear or whatever you're sewing, as you go around the garment, as you secure the end of the garment, you secure it once, and then I think you're supposed to go over it at another time to secure what you're sewing. See, what I had failed to do was to listen with a clear mind to my teacher as they taught how to secure your garment that day. See, I had failed to listen with an open mind and a clear mind to hear what she was saying, that last stitch, in order to secure it firmly in place. And because I didn't listen, because I wasn't paying attention, because I wasn't having my mind ready in class, I was thinking of something else. I'm sure I was probably planning my touchdown celebration. I was embarrassed. Yeah, I was embarrassed of what had happened. See, Paul has been writing this letter to the book, or to the people in Colossae. There's these people that have been a church planted in their midst. See, Paul hasn't been to see them yet. He's in jail, but he's kind of like the superintendent, and he's writing a letter to this church in Colossae to tell them how proud he is of them, that he's praying for them, and he's giving them kind of these instructions on how to live their life, on what it looks like to live as a follower and believer of Jesus. And he kind of is telling them that these things, and we've kind of talked about, we set this week up, right? And the people in Colossae have kind of are living this distinct life, and Paul is coming to them saying, listen, this is a life you used to live, but this is a life you need to live, right? There's these cultural differences that you've been living, right? And I need you to understand that this is the old you take it off, right? Last week we talked about how we take off the old sinful nature and put on these things that I've given to you, love, grace, hope, and put these on. And he shares how that the thing that you really need to do is put on love, right? That love binds all of it together. It's kind of like that last stitch, right? You kind of thread love into all of these things. And in this closing chapter to the people of Colossae, he's writing to them to devote themselves to prayer with a clear and alert mind, right? He says, I need you to be alert. I need your mind to be clear. And I need you to live wisely. Like, I need you to be careful that you're living wisely among the community. And it's as if he's wrote these 3 letters to the church in Colossae, and now he's saying, these are your final marching orders. Like, this is the final marching orders for you. Let's look at chapter 4. It says this, Masters, provide your slaves with what is right and fair, because you know that you have a master in heaven. Devote yourselves to prayer, being watchful and thankful, being alert, is another translation. And pray for us too, that God may open the doors for our message, so that we may proclaim the mystery of Christ, for which I'm in chains. Pray that I may proclaim it clearly as I should. Be wise in the way you act toward others. Make the most of every opportunity. See, let your conversations be full of grace always, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. In this passage, Paul is finishing off this letter. He's giving the marching orders to the people in the church, and he's kind of helping them work through this cultural transformation as they went from what they used to be to something new. He shares that there's got to be a change in your life, right? You got to go from the old you to the new you, and the people in Colossae are they have their feet in 2 worlds of the same world, right? He's not telling them you need to leave everyone and everything and leave them and be kind of a hermit in a brand new world, but he's saying you have your feet in 2 worlds, but yet the same place. He wants them to be all in this faith, right? And he's trying to explain to them here that the problem is that I need you to live with an alert and clear mind. Like this mind, your mind needs to be just ready for action around you, ready for things that are going on. See, can you live a life that is alert and wise and ready? What would change in our lives if we lived this way? See, what would change in our lives, you and me, if we lived a life with an alert and clear mind, on a mind that's ready for what God has for us? When I was growing up, we went as a youth group up to the Boundary Waters, which is, for those of you that don't know where the Boundary Waters are at, it's a camping wilderness, and it's untouched by boats with an engine, right? The only way to get really deep into the Boundary Waters canoe area is to go up, and then you kind of launch into the first lake, and then you kind of have to go from lake to lake carrying all of your stuff, right? You either, if you're strong enough to carry your entire full canoe, which most people are not, you can go from one lake to another, and how far and how deep into the wilderness you go depends on how much time you have, and how much strength you have. And so we would go into this beautiful wilderness. And I remember as we would launch off into the lake, and we went for years in high school, as we would launch into this moment and go into this wilderness, we would have this idea of we're kind of getting away, right? And the first lake you'd go into, you would go and you would start to kind of see a difference in the trees and the lake around you. And the first lake was pretty clear. But by the time you got to the second and third lake, I mean, you could see to the bottom of this very deep, right? You could see down 10 and 15 feet. You could see the fish swimming around in this deep, crystal clear water. You could see the rocks and branches of trees that were at the bottom of these lakes, and it was quiet. And as you'd set up your camping, as you'd put your tents in the ground, as you'd get your wood gathered, I remember by day 2 and 3, going out on rocks a little bit further from camp with just myself, maybe a canteen of water, or sometimes I would bring my Bible or a notebook to write in. But I remember by the second day and the third day as we were out there, I remember that my mind would just clear out of all the distractions and all the things and all the concerns and all the worries that I had held on to that kind of weighed down on me, because this was a space and a place that was just clear and untouched. Right? And as deep and beautiful as the water was, my soul started to feel that as well. Right? And in this passage, Paul is writing and saying, I need you to live your life with this clear mind. I need you to live this alert mind, so you are alert and ready for the things around you. And as we would be there, the longer I was there, the clearer my heart was and my mind was to hear what God had for me. So the problem was, I was living this life in moments before I got there that I was being bombarded with all the stuff of what was going on. Paul is giving this marching orders of what is next, right? He's giving these orders and saying, hey, I need you to live this clear mind, and I need you to have this attentive moment. And I feel like at times Paul is almost like trying to sneak these people out of this funk they're in and saying, hey, I need you to listen because it's so important. And at times in my life, when I'm kind of around my family and around my kids, I need to kind of clap at them to get their attention, to clear out some of the stuff. And God does this for me. So often God has to clap us back into this moment, to fix our eyes on who he is. With this idea, he says, I need you to speak and live with grace. When I was growing up, I lived on our family farm, and it was my parents lived in the house. In the middle was my grandparents, and next to them was my uncle and aunt and their kids, my cousins. So there's 3 families living on this farm, and we had this awesome experience growing up. And I remember my grandmother, and she was amazing at making cookies, right? She could make the best sugar cookies. And I remember seemed to always be a tin of sugar cookies ready to eat in the house, right? And she always had pickles. She would can pickles every fall and summer as the cucumbers would be ready to pickle. And the amazing thing about her was everything seemed to be just perfectly seasoned, right? And if it wasn't, you never said anything. I remember as my grandmother got older, she would be canning stuff, and she would miscount and misremember which of the jars already had seasoning salt in. And so some of the jars would get the regular amount of seasoning salt, the salt, the canning salt. Some of them would get none, and then some of them would get way too much, right? Some of them would get the scoops that were supposed to go in the empty jar, right? The ones that didn't get any of the canning salt would get a double portion of the canning salt. And so we didn't really know that was done until later on at Thanksgiving or Christmas or just a meal you were eating at Grandma's house, as she would open up the jar. And I didn't really like pickled stuff, so I didn't really have to eat any of it. But my other family, the other family that was there, they would take a pickle out of there and eat it. And as they would eat that, they would have this look on their face of, oh, whoa, this has way too much salt on it, right? Or this one has way not enough. This is just, this is not enough salt on it. And then you just have this hilarious moment, but you could never tell your grandma that she had over-salted or over-seasoned, right? You've probably experienced that. Maybe not that exact thing, but you've had a meal that someone's cooked and it's way too light on seasoning. And you've also had meals with somebody that they have over-seasoned it and it has way too much salt on something. I told you she made these amazing sugar cookies. And as she would make these sugar cookies, she would press them down. She would kind of sprinkle sugar on top and press them, right? And I remember eating some of the cookies that she would make, and she accidentally used salt instead of sugar, and then you'd eat the cookie. You see, you never told her that it was bad. You just told her that it was good, right? Because you didn't want to hurt her feelings, and you just ate it. You ate it without complaining. See, Paul is telling them that your life, your conversation, the words that you use should be full of grace, seasoned with salt. And when you have a well-seasoned conversation, you've had that with somebody, right? You know what it's like to be in a conversation with somebody, and they're showing this remarkable grace to you, and the conversation is attractive, right? It's good. It is a conversation that you want to be a part of. And man, you also have been a part of conversations with somebody that is not full of grace, right? That is lacking in grace. And man, that is a conversation you just do not want to be a part of. And it's not attractive to people, right? It's not a conversation that you want others to be a part of, that you are inviting others into this conversation. See, when I went to college, my grandmother I would go to her house to say goodbye, right? And she would have tins of cookies packed up for me to take. And she would have that there ready. And then I would take it with me back to school. And they were amazing cookies. And she would pack like load me down with buns and jam and stuff. And I would want to share that with other people because they tasted so good, because they were so remarkable, right? The flavoring and just just that's what it's like. See, that's what it's like when we have a conversation with grace infused, that when we're offering grace, when we know somebody in our life that is full of grace, that their conversations are just dripping with grace, that is remarkable to be in a conversation with them, is remarkable to be around them. We want to invite other people to be a part of that. See, the conversations are attractive. And Paul is saying you need to have those kind of conversations, that is who you want to be drawn to, and others outside of your community are drawn to them too. See, how often do my conversations lack the seasoning? See, there are two kind of things, two marching orders that Paul is giving. See, he says how to pray. Be alert and clear mind with a thankful heart. What for? For a chance, right? Be praying for just a chance to share the gospel and how to proclaim the message clear. So that's really the first marching order he gives to the people in this church. He says, I want you to pray for an alert and clear mind and a thankful heart. What for? For a chance, just a chance to share the gospel and how to proclaim it clear. And secondly, the second marching order he gives is to how to live wisely, to make the most of each chance, and to have our conversations be seasoned well with grace. So what? So what? How do we get there? How do we get to this point that those marching orders are kind of apportioned into our life, that they're a part of who we are, that I don't have to go to the Boundary Waters every single summer in order to clear my mind and have that space? That's a long trip to go. How do we do it here and now? How do we get filled? Well, in Psalms 27:4, King David shares this. Psalms 27:4 says, "One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek." Now, King David's asking for one thing. See, he doesn't have a laundry list of stuff ready to go into this moment. He says this, he asks for grace. No. See, he must ask for love, a great love for those around him. He doesn't. He must ask that God would just bless his leadership skills, that he can lead with this amazing authority, right? No. Maybe he asks for x-ray vision to see, the enemies coming. He doesn't. See, he asks for one thing. The one thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. See, he doesn't ask for all the riches. He doesn't ask for a million wishes. No, he asks just to be in the presence at his throne. See, King David had his own throne, right? He was on his own throne. He was on his own way of leading. But he left his throne to go to the throne of the one that mattered. See, we're talking about all thrones this series of how the throne that we need to worry about is his. See, Paul is telling the people here in this letter as he closes it that you need to have your grace, you need to have your conversations covered in grace. See, I cannot do this well-seasoned grace that's on my own. See, for me to be full of grace, full of hope, full of peace, I need to be in his presence. See, for me to live wisely among people around me, I need more of Jesus and less of me. See, we need to be in his presence. Stop desiring to be in a place God is not. Because see, his faithfulness has not run out. See, the thing about being in his presence, in God's presence, is he gives us what we need. So I can ask God for a lot of stuff. I can ask him for grace. I can ask him for faith. I can ask him for salvation of my soul, my life. But I would rather sit in his presence and just say, God, whatever you see the need, give it to me today. But why are we afraid to do that? See, why am I afraid to be in his presence? Why am I afraid to go to his throne? Why do I sit back and try to do it on my own at times? Why do I try to fill the grace on my own and try to season my life with the grace I think that people want? Ruth Haley Barton shares this. And it's when you're in his presence, this is solitude, right? One reason we avoid solitude, she shares, is that we are scared that we will get there and there will be very little between us and God. So you were afraid that if I am actually in his presence, there's not going to be anything there. It's almost being on this like almost like being on this date with somebody that you have nothing in common with anymore. That you go to you've talked about this relationship with this God for so long, and when you finally get there, you realize you have nothing in common. See, God desires for us to be there. And when we step out in that moment, when we trust Jesus and place him back on the throne, see, when we press through the hard moments, those difficult moments that don't feel good all the time, when we finally enter his presence and we say, God, I just need this time with you, Give me what I need. Fill me with what you think I need. When we are willing to place ourselves in that humble position at his throne, everything changes. See, and it changes in the point that we have this clear mind, we have this alert mind, that we can pray for others around us, that they will have a moment to share the goodness of God, that when we share with people, that we are overflowing with grace to the point that we are seasoned well. I think Isaiah 43 really puts a capsule on this moment. See, when we finally allow ourselves to be in his presence and are truly vulnerable before him, I believe that Psalm 43 verses 1 and 2 really encapsulate what happens to us. It says this: "But now this is what the Lord says, He who created you, Jacob, He who formed you, Israel, do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name, and you are." When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. Trust the one on the throne.